That Talking Podcast. I'm JJ Starr.
And I'm Downtown Andy.
Welcome. We are here to talk. We are here to bring civil discourse to an otherwise discordant world. How are you, Andy?
I'm trying really hard not to do my Morgan and Freeman impression on the feed.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're going to end up doing it at some point.
I'm sure I will.
Sure you will.
Yeah.
You've already done it. It is somewhere amidst other recordings.
I'll just drop it, where I feel appropriate. You'll have to stay tuned. Probably about the 8-minute mark. That's usually how it goes in podcasts.
Just calling it now, the 8-minute mark.
Yeah. See, now you're gonna have some people that are like on the button, just waiting for that. I'm not watching the counter. I'm actually laying in bed, staring at the ceiling. So you want to hear Morgan Freeman? Go watch Bruce Almighty.
I'll keep an eye on it. Well, welcome for anyone new to listening to That Talking Podcast. We do have some simple rules here. We live by 3 simple rules, right? Three of them.
Simple.
We got 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yep. No judgment, nothing personal, and don't be a dick.
Don't be that dick.
Don't be the dick.
Nope.
You know what I want to talk about? I have a question for you.
Being the dick?
No, it's not actually about, well, maybe, yeah, kind of. But I have a question for you.
This is going to be a hot take.
My question to you is, without like boiling it down to quote unquote, don't judge a book by its cover, let me ask you, do you believe that to an extent the clothing that you wear represents your personal values?
Absolutely. Because
not even a hesitation, nothing.
Yeah, because my choice in attire has drastically changed over the years. I mean, you see a lot of t-shirts that I've cut up and framed and hung throughout the bedroom on the walls. I used to define myself by my band t-shirts, and now I'm basically defined by comfort because all of my shirts are exactly the same. I just like the consistency of the cotton.
But if these were still t-shirts, would you still wear them?
No, because I have an entire thing of t-shirts over there that I don't wear anymore.
But you still enjoy those bands.
Absolutely. I think with age, my tastes have changed, but
certainly you wouldn't.
There certainly was a time where I was all about these bands in particular.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, but certainly you wouldn't wear a t-shirt of a band that you don't like.
Listen, I can't
imagine
all day today in particular listening to jazz from like 70 to 80 years ago.
Why?
And I have no t-shirts with Art Tatum or Glenn Miller or...
If I got you a Glenn Miller t-shirt, would you wear
I'd absolutely wear that to work. Or Artie Shaw.
Oh, I'll get you an Artie Shaw t-shirt. It'll just say, it's literally just going to be block letters. It's just going to say all the girls love Artie Shaw.
If you can get me a Dogs Playing Poker t-shirt with Artie Shaw, Art Tatum, Glenn Miller, Duke Ellington, maybe Ella Fitzgerald.
You're really making me work for it now.
Oh, yeah. That would be the best Christmas present ever.
But if you were to walk into an establishment, let's say, a business, okay, and you were to see someone wearing a t-shirt, you would presume, I'm sure, that person, like if it was a band, you would presume that person enjoys that band.
Yeah.
Now,
fair point.
Would you presume that it has any reflection on the establishment itself?
No.
Okay.
Well, at first glance, no. But if I were to read too far into it, which I'm sure some people may do, they'd probably think that if it were to have a reflection, it's that, the company doesn't necessarily care as much about the impression that they're... the impression they're giving off to their customers, that they're laxed in that policy.
I mean, we see that, at it's like a disclaimer attached to movie credits and TV credits and everything, like what is it? They say, like, the perspectives, and the opinions don't reflect the production company and stuff like that. If you watch
any Disney movie from, the 50s or the 60s, there's always that disclaimer at the beginning.
There certainly is now, yeah.
Because there was all that cultural misappropriation going on.
Yeah. And do you believe, and again, I don't want this to devolve into a conversation necessarily about censorship, because once you get me started, I'm going to go off.
Let's just be blunt for the sake of our audience. We recorded this episode already and had to re-record it because we let a little too many specifics get into the recording of it. So bottom line is, why don't you tell our listeners exactly where you're going with this without
Okay.
giving it all away.
All right. If you were to walk into a business and you were to see, let's say, a drugstore, okay, and you were to see one of the staff wearing a Playboy shirt, nothing vulgar, no foul language or anything like that, just the bunny. We all know what the bunny looks like.
Yeah.
What would your opinion be about seeing something like that?
I wouldn't think twice about it.
You wouldn't care.
I wouldn't care. If I was going into a professional set, like a what I would perceive to be a formal setting, like a place that I would expect to see people in suits, like if I went into a lawyer's office and I just saw a guy walking around in his office in a Playboy shirt, I would think that would be a little unprofessional.
Okay.
If I walked into any retail establishment, I wouldn't think twice.
Now, what if you were to, let's say, go into a doctor's office or a hospital even, and everyone's wearing scrubs, right? Because that's what they do. But it's a cold day, and one of them is wearing a hoodie with a Playboy bunny on it over their scrubs. Would you presume that if something like that is permitted, that it could reflect that the organization or the company supports a brand like that?
I wouldn't necessarily make that distinction, but just because I don't doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't or would.
Now, here is where it gets sticky, right? Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure that everyone can attest. I mean, even people who have only listened to us a couple of times, I'm pretty sure at this point will realize that I'm no prude.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not one for being a prude, and I'm definitively 5,000% against all forms of censorship. All forms of censorship. But I do understand that there are certain things that are going to upset people. You can walk into a grocery store and hear, like, you know, an R. Kelly song playing over the radio or something like that, and someone can surely get pissed off about that. But is it then the responsibility of the store to turn the music off because it bothers somebody?
Well, I think we're at a point now where the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Because as we know firsthand, a lot of things aren't even paid attention to unless somebody's complaining, unless somebody raises an eyebrow or gets loud about it.
The status quo remains until someone complains,
which is very unfortunate because there's a lot of things.
That was poetry. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
The status quo remains unless someone complains. I'm fucking magical.
You better copyright that shit now.
Boilerplate.
But it's unfortunate that we've gotten to that point because I feel like a lot of common sense has just gone out the window.
Yeah.
I see it all day, every day, and I could go on and about that. But we are at that point in the sense that somebody has to be outraged in order for something to be done.
I personally don't think that outrage I don't think it should be the catalyst point, though. I truly don't know. I don't know if I believe that outrage should be the catalyst point for all change. People, it's like, going back to the idea that, video games and cartoons and rap music is the reason why people become violent. It's like,
I mean, that's a factor in certain instances.
It can be, but I think that it's a broad generalization, and people throwing these blankets.
Just one cause.
Yeah, like these blankets being thrown out there and everything. But I can understand if someone's offended by anything, because let's face it, especially nowadays, everything is offensive.
Well,
to
do
at
you
least
think there's
someone.
a difference between being offended or what people could take offense over and what could be deemed inappropriate?
Absolutely.
Well, elaborate a little bit.
I think that there is an absolute distinction between that, because offense is okay. So offense is to cause like an upheaval with malicious intent.
So there's intent. Okay.
Yes. Someone can take offense and be, the object thereof.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm getting into grammar. But if you are the subject of offense, it has to come with malintent.
Versus what's inappropriate, which is not necessarily done with intent.
Correct. If someone does something, says something, wears something
Like wearing a Playboy shirt.
like wearing a Playboy shirt when it may not be appropriate given the establishment, the organization, the environment, whatever it is, etc., etc.
Kids preschool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My mother had a Playboy t-shirt when I was growing up, and she wore it, and it was just a black t-shirt with a little white bunny smoking a cigarette. I didn't know what it was.
I'd like to get into this for a minute. I'd like to believe that common sense dictates that there are certain things that we should all just generally know that you just don't do. You just don't say.
Yeah.
But in recent years, I found myself questioning whether or not that's actually true, because I'm not necessarily sure that everyone is aware of what's common sense, what should be construed as common sense.
I feel it might be a generational thing as well, because I think that, Gen X, Gen Y, to an extent, I guess, some of Gen Z, was probably instilled with the idea that, like, there are certain things you don't do. Like you don't wear fishnets to a funeral.
Right. Well,
I mean, I guess it depends on the funeral, but traditionally
you shouldn't. But I mean, I've seen people wearing street clothes to funerals before. It's
well, yeah, but I mean the same way that people wear street clothes to church.
Yeah.
It used to be that you don't do that just because it's inappropriate.
Right.
And some people may take offense to it,
yeah.
but you don't necessarily mean offense by it.
Right.
I have a t-shirt that says "Go fuck yourself" on it. And
I have one that says "Shut the fuck up."
And there are situations where I know it is inappropriate to wear that. But it's not going to stop me from wearing it in situations and in environments where it is not necessarily considered inappropriate to do so.
It's precisely why I don't go around wearing that sweatshirt I bought with my boss's face on it.
Not anymore, anyway.
I haven't worn it in public yet, but, he and I have been on better terms, and,
But, like, that's where common sense kicks in, is that there are these things that, like, some part of your brain, whether it's taught to you or it's an innate sense, it just seems like one of those things that you pick up, that you understand that certain things are just inappropriate. Now, if someone does in fact take offense to your inappropriate action, I'm about to say a very unpopular thing. That's their problem.
Exactly. I've said many times over the years, in various instances, I can't be held responsible for somebody else's perception. I can't be held accountable for how they take something.
It's the difference between...
I've been told that I absolutely should be.
Yes, and that is...
but those are also instances that have been drummed up by people who accuse me of doing things that they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, hypocrisy is running rampant. It's just, ugh. But it's the difference between implying and inferring. And that's just it, is that if you say you're offending me, okay. Like, if someone were to say you did something offensive to me, I, as the person I am, I'm sure would probably apologize. But I'm not going to walk on eggshells around people because they might be offended by something that I do. I mean, look at my body. I've been told that I am a walking offense. I haven't
gotten quite there yet.
I have been told I am offensive. I've been told I'm repulsive. And I've in public by strangers. Yeah. I have been accosted with these things simply because my body is heavily tattooed and modified.
I still walk around just assuming that everyone's bothered by my appearance, that people look down on me and think less of me just because of the decision that I made to, put ink on my body.
Yeah.
I've, become more comfortable not caring about it so much, but I'll never forget. I used to work in public schools before doing what I do now. And a mother...
Same.
Yeah, that's right. A mother came up to me one time and she saw the ones on my hands and she goes, "Oh, did the kids do that?" I was like, "No, ma'am, they're real."
Yeah.
Oh, what a pity. I'm like,
oh,
you.
What a pity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't miss that.
I was working a retail job, and a woman literally said to me, she said, I can't hold my tongue any longer. Like she had been bottling this up for the 20 minutes she was in my shop, and said to me, she's like, I don't know why you would do that to yourself. Your face is so pretty. The rest of this is repulsive.
Didn't somebody say something like that to you when you were waiting around at the pharmacy one day after we were married?
Yeah. They didn't say it to me. They were whispering behind me.
Oh, man.
They were standing on the pharmacy line behind us.
I really wish you would just turn around and put them in their place.
Man. The fact...
I'm offended by that.
I did not want my record to reflect that I punched an old woman in the face at a pharmacy, honestly. But it would have, because...
Good street cred, though.
I know, right? But, again, common sense kicked in, and it said,
Absolutely.
Hey, don't punch that bitch in the face. She'll shatter.
We have to restrain ourselves, especially when it comes to the neighbors. That's another thing, too, is that anybody who knows us knows that we've given them, and we won't be specific, but a million chances to do the right thing, and they just keep giving us reasons to be offended by their inappropriateness.
But that's just it, is that getting just...
back to
bringing it back.
Yeah.
Just because someone is offended by something does not even necessarily make it inappropriate. Again, depending upon the environment that you're in and everything, the music playing could be offensive to somebody. And just because you don't like something or have an appreciation for it also does not necessarily make it offensive. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean you're necessarily offended by it. So to use that word in such a broad manner is truly misleading at this point. I find that offensive.
When I'm standing around in the morning at the office casing mail, I'm usually bothered by the fact that people are all around me are talking loudly, making jokes, talking about, sports games from the night before, this and that, all things that don't pertain to me. And it's frustrating because I'm trying to concentrate on what I'm doing. Okay. And I would very much like to say to them, please stop, please, try and keep it down. Yeah. I've made small comments here and there, but there have also been times where I've just wanted to scream and say, shut the fuck up, because I can't do my job.
Yeah.
And then I've more recently taken some more time to think about what it's like to be the other person and think, well, it's really not fair to them either for me to just be like, clam up, because they're doing what they're doing too. And, I've gotten through it. But at the same time, there's a lack of common sense. It's just like, hey, you're not the only person in here.
Yeah. And I mean, that definitely speaks to a degree of inconsideration, which I think goes sort of hand in hand with the idea of doing things and saying things that are inappropriate in situations. But
now, I'm not going to sit here and say I've never said anything inappropriate, that I've never offended anyone.
That would just be
a lie.
That would just be foolish for anyone to say.
But how much do we really focus on that? I mean, honestly, how much do we really look at ourselves and think, are we being appropriate? Are we avoiding being insensitive to other people's sensitivities?
I think there is a good amount of people, I'd like to include myself amongst them, who take into account whether or not their behavior is in fact possibly teetering on offensive. Like, for example, brace yourself. I say the word cunt all the time, but I choose not to say it at work. Not because I believe it's an offensive word, but because I know that there are gonna be people who are gonna have a problem with it. The fact of the matter is, it's a fucking word. It's in Shakespeare and Chaucer. It's just another word. It's just a fucking word. Now, there are people who, brace yourselves again, there are people out there who can't tolerate the word moist.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. Fuck you.
There are some people who made it very clear that I was not allowed to say the word cunt in their presence. I was not allowed to say the word moist in their presence. I was not allowed.
How on earth would you ever describe a cake?
Delicious.
Right? Like this delicious wet cake. Mm-mm. Yeah.
Listen, if you're making a wet cake, you need to go back to Betty Crocker's
Sorry.
Institute.
But yeah, like there are instances where I think common sense tells you to not like to a degree of like code switching kind of a thing, but like to truly investigate whether or not your behavior is potentially insensitive.
Well,
I don't want to say offensive, but insensitive.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
What do you think about people who say that we're being too sensitive? We're putting too much emphasis on that.
I don't necessarily disagree. Like,
what do you think about those people who are just like, stop being a fucking pussy, man up, deal with it, get over it?
I truly believe wholeheartedly, and this is something that, you know, has, I don't want to go so far as to be like nut up and take it kind of a thing. I look at it from a more clinical perspective, honestly, and that is the fact that I believe it is every individual's responsibility to understand as a human person that you have zero control over other people's behavior. You cannot alter someone else's behavior just because you want to.
I'm really glad you bring that up because it took me a long time, and I mean a long time, to really let that sink in, because people would say it to me all the time, and I would implore people to understand my perspective on a lot of things, but then ultimately I realize, no, I can't control everyone or everything or every outcome of every situation. It was a very difficult pill to swallow, but I just learned to live without needing that affirmation.
Well, I mean, that's just it. And that's part of some, you know, I think a part of self-awareness. I think that everyone should train themselves to understand. And it does take a long time. It takes a long time, I think, for a lot of people to really grasp that, because when you hold an ideal so tightly that you insist on everyone around you understanding it so that they can conform to a degree, so that they can not change their mind about such an opinion, but like they can understand you a little bit better. It's not their responsibility to do so. And it's not your responsibility to change someone's opinion.
Listen, I'm offended by a lot of things very regularly.
And I am not.
Very regularly. But I have a very thick skin, which is why I don't necessarily vocalize about it.
Yeah.
But lack of consideration is probably the biggest one. And I perceive a lot of what I see to be lack of consideration because it's the same offenses on a daily basis in the same situations by the same people. Like, for example, people not emptying their mailbox. I take that as a personal offense because it's just common sense. Get your fucking mail.
It's common courtesy.
It should be common sense.
I mean, again...
you've heard me say at length, how do these people order stuff, pay for stuff, intend for it to arrive to their house, and then let it sit there for days, weeks, months? I can't tell you how many businesses don't pick up their shit when people are sending them, you know, bills that they're paying and official documents and things like that. That pisses me off.
I think that's reasonable.
I had a person who, she lost her key and asked me, what do? I go to the office and get a replacement. You know what they did? They drilled out the lock.
That seems extreme.
Yeah, so now they're
also seems that they shouldn't have done that.
No, they shouldn't have.
It really seems like they truly should not have done that.
I just, and with today, I told you, I'm coming around a corner and I see a family out, you know, halfway between their driveway and the street, just playing around, kids on bikes, blowing bubbles, doing whatever. And I can't believe I saw what I saw. This grown man put his hands around his child's head. This kid could not have been older than 5. And he lifted him off the ground by his head. Now, this guy had to be older than me. He's probably late 40s, early 50s. And he lifts the kid into the air. And I'm thinking to myself, who let you reproduce?
Maybe he's a chiropractor and he was adjusting the kid's
He
neck.
thought it was funny. He's like, look what I can do. And I'm just thinking to myself, I would love to jump out of this truck and just smack you. But I'm not about to.
You're not about to punch an old woman at the pharmacy.
But then what is to be done? Like, should I call the police? Should I call DCF? Should I mind my own business? Should I forget about it?
That is a situation where,
like, what if he were to do serious damage?
Then you can play witness to something like that, but you do not have the facts. You don't have all of the facts.
I know what I saw.
You know what you saw,
yeah,
but you don't know what was happening.
Right. But it's still, it doesn't remove that cringy, just awful feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Because it's something that you would not have done.
Absolutely.
It's something that you would not have done. Similarly, you could say, if you see kids roughhousing, if you see kids doing jackass kind of stuff, right? There are plenty of people who would be like, their parents should go to jail for letting them do that. Like, these kids are just beating the crap out of each other now. Where's the common sense? Where are the parents? Where is this, that, and the other thing and everything? But it's a degree to which you have to understand that, because sometimes that's just what people do.
But I want to touch on this for a minute. You know what I take great offense to is when something bothers you, when you feel something is inappropriate or offensive, and then you speak up about it.
Okay.
And you want to do something. You want to do something to make sure it doesn't keep happening.
Sure.
For whatever the reason, whether you're intervening on someone's behalf or it's something that's bothering you, you just want it to go away. Okay, because you don't think that it's a positive thing. It needs to be dealt with.
Okay.
And you've gone through every proper channel to try and stop it. And you've talked to everybody that you should be talking to and given every bit of proof and gone to the fullest extent that you possibly can, doing everything you believe to be correct.
Yes.
And the problem still does not get solved.
Yeah.
Which we know firsthand.
We know very, very well.
In not even just one area, in several.
Yes.
What do you do then? What is the solution?
That's just it. Is the question is, what is the solution?
Because if somebody,
that's a $64,000 question right there. What is the solution at that point?
Especially if it's offensive, if somebody is intending to offend or intending to go out and cause frustration or discomfort,
it's malicious. It is 5,000%.
What is the solution?
Malicious.
Now, I've proposed this question to tons of people. You, coworkers, family, friends, everybody, and nobody has an answer.
Well, I'm sure that several people's answers are, I think the two most popular answers in a situation like that would be things that people don't want to be the ones to suggest.
Don't want to get their hands dirty.
Number one, vigilante justice. And number two is the complete opposite of that, and that is shrug it off and wash your hands of the situation. No one wants to make those suggestions because no one wants to be the one to catalyze following through on that. Everyone wants to believe that there is a solution to every problem and that it should be easy because, let's face it, I think we all agree that the easiest solution is the one that we all want. For whatever reason, instant gratification, laziness, whatever you want to call it.
It's not the easiest to attain, though.
But it's not the easiest to attain, that's just it. Because it would require a consensus on common sense. It would. It would require a consensus on common sense that we as a people just don't seem to have anymore. For example, someone's offended by a Playboy shirt. They complain.
Way to bring it home.
They complain about it. And nothing is going to get done because it is not deemed inappropriate in that situation. Fine. But they are nonetheless continuing to be offended by this thing. The only thing they can do is quite literally go to the person and say, I want you to stop wearing that in front of me. It is a personal request at that point. It would be the same thing if someone were to say, I would really like you to not listen to DMX. It's like, because, whatever.
He's going to give it to you.
Because he is going to give it to you. But it's like, you can make a request at that point, but you have to be prepared for the fact that you are absolutely, at least 90% of the time, gonna get shut the fuck down. Because that is what happens when you impose a censorship on somebody. You have every right to be offended by something, but they also have the right to say fuck you. That's just the way that it works. Unless you're Instagram and you want to show a nipple.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We'll talk about the nipple on another episode because that's gotta be its own thing.
Hang on a second. I gotta step out for a minute. I'm gonna have my assistant come in and finish this up and take us out.
No, God.
Hello, Jess.
I swear.
How you doing? I'm Morgan Freeman.
No, you're not.
I feel like you and Andy had a good talk.
Yeah, was this a good talk?
I think so. I was in the other room.
You were just standing in the closet. Morgan Freeman standing in the closet watching.
Listening. I was given a listen to talk about censorship. You seem very impassioned about it.
I am.
The subject.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and Andy.
Me and Andy.
You and Andy having a good conversation.
Yeah. We do that. Can I get him back in here?
Oh, let me go find Andy. Oh, wait, nope, that's Andy Dufresne. I have to go find I have to go find downtown Andy. Downtown Andy.
Downtown Andy Dufresne. My God.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry.
Morgan Freeman said it was a good talk. Was it a good talk? Did we have a good talk?
I thought so.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will. I've no doubt we're gonna have to do. We could talk about censorship and common
you've had
sense.
your bouts over censorship. With
and I will continue to
socials.
do so. I will continue to do so because fuck it. But this was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice, good to get some of that shit off our chests, I think.
Yeah. I think there's always going to be more to say. There's always going to be. We could always go further into these conversations because again, we're kind of left on a cliffhanger here. You know, this problem is not yet solved.
No.
And we'd love to hear if our listeners have any suggestions.
Yeah, for sure.
Or any, similar stories to share.
I have no doubt that an episode like this especially will warrant a follow-up at some point. For sure. But in the meantime, good talk.
Yeah. High five.
High five. Yes. So thank you for joining us for this good talk. Find us on social media. We're on Instagram at DTAndy and JJ Star with 2 R's. We're on YouTube and TikTok. Thank you, Downtown Andy, for the Geet, our theme song.
Thank you for the editing and the wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're all right.
You smiled and I froze up.
You're adorable.
Yeah.
And so from the 3 of us, including the dog here at That Talking Podcast, yeah, she's over here snoring away.
She tried knocking over the apparatus quite a few times.
She did try knocking it off because she's sick of us talking.
It's like, somebody take me out to pee.
Well, again, from the 3 of us here at That Talking Podcast, I'm JJ Star.
And I'm Downtown Andy.
And we will talk to you later.
Talk to you later.